Okay, picture this. It's 1876. The world has no idea that World War I is even on the horizon, and yet one man steps forward and claims he's found a secret timeline hidden in the Bible, a timeline that points to a single world-changing year, 1914. So how on earth did he do it? Well, today, we're going to follow the breadcrumbs and decode exactly how this incredible prediction was built. So, can an ancient book really be a treasure map to the future? You know, in October of 1876, a writer named Charles Taze Russell published an article basically saying, yes, it can. He was convinced that he had found the one key that unlocked the true prophetic meaning of the year 1914. So, how did he build his case? This is where it gets really interesting. To understand the 1914 prediction, we have to, for a moment, see the world through his eyes. We're going to follow the exact same scriptures and the exact same logic that he used to land on that very specific date. And as Russell himself put it, his whole quest was a search for a key. I mean, his thinking was, God wouldn't reveal a prophecy without also providing the way to understand it, right? For him, the Bible was this divine treasure house, and he was absolutely determined to find the key that could unlock its hidden timeline. This is where we get to the real heart of his argument. And the best way to think about it is like a kind of prophetic equation. Russell believed he could take different pieces from all over the Bible, fit them together, and solve for one big unknown, the end date. So let's break down his formula. The whole thing, and I mean the entire calculation, it all hinges on this one concept, the Gentile times. So what are they? Russell defined this as a long stretch of history where non-Jewish nations would basically run the world without any direct say from God. And he believed it all kicked off at a very specific moment in history, the overthrow of Jerusalem's very last king, a man named Zedekiah. Okay, so the first piece of his puzzle comes from the book of Luke. Here, Jesus talks about Jerusalem being trodden down by the Gentiles until their times are fulfilled. Now, notice what this verse does. It gives the period a name, the Gentile times, but it doesn't give it a length. It tells you what is happening, but it leaves you wondering for how long. Which, of course, leads to the million-dollar question. If the Bible actually names this period, does it also tell us how long it's supposed to last? To answer that, Russell knew he needed to find another piece of the puzzle. He needed to find his key. And he believed he found exactly what he was looking for way back in the book of Leviticus. In this passage, God warns Israel about a punishment for their disobedience that would last for 7 times. For Russell, this was the aha moment. He connected this punishment period with the Gentile times from Luke and concluded they were the exact same thing. These mysterious 7 times became the missing number he needed. So here's how all those pieces snap together. Step 1, the start date. 606 BCE, when King Zedekiah was kicked off his throne. Step 2, the duration, those 7 times. For the formula, Russell looked to the book of Revelation, where 3.5 times is shown to equal 1,260 days. So 7 times? That's just double that, 2,520 days. Then came the crucial rule. Applying a day for a year principle, those 2,520 days suddenly become 2,520 years. And finally, you just do the math. If you start in the year 606 BCE and you move forward 2,520 years, you land, directly on 1914. Okay, so there you have it, the complete calculation laid out from start to finish. But now we're going to hit pause, let's zoom out, and put this entire line of reasoning under a microscope. We're going to take a closer look at the very foundations of this argument, the key assumptions that make the whole thing work. Let's start with that absolute linchpin phrase from Leviticus, 7 times. Russell read this as a period of time, a duration. But most modern biblical analysis suggests the original Hebrew here implies intensity, not time. So instead of a punishment lasting for 7 times, it would be more like, I will strike you 7 times harder. Now that single interpretive difference, it could unravel the whole timeline. And there are other big assumptions you have to question. For example, are the Gentile times from Luke and the treading of Jerusalem definitely the same period, starting at the exact same time? And does a Babylonian king's personal bout of madness, which, by the way, also lasted 7 times, really symbolize the entire span of Gentile world power? And what about that day for a year rule? It wasn't a direct scriptural command, but what Russell himself called an accepted church tradition. Each of these is a pretty significant interpretive leap. But what's really fascinating is that this calculation wasn't just set in stone.
As new historical information came to light over the decades, the formula itself actually had to evolve, all to make sure that the final answer, 1914, stayed the same.
Just take the start date, for instance. Russell originally used 606 BCE, but much later, historians confirmed something that threw a wrench in the works. There is no year zero when you count from BCE to CE. It goes from 1 BCE straight to 1 CE. Well, this discovery threw the math off by a full year. So to compensate and still land right on 1914, the starting date for Jerusalem's destruction had to be moved back 1 year to 607 BCE. So, what about the big payoff? What was actually supposed to happen in 1914? In his original article, Russell predicted that governments would be dashed to pieces and Jerusalem would be delivered forever. The reality, though, was quite a bit different. World War I broke out, which actually strengthened national governments, and Jerusalem remained under foreign control for decades more. The world-ending events he described, well, they just didn't happen as he predicted. And here's a twist that might be the most surprising of all. The core ideas in this calculation, they weren't actually original to Russell. The whole framework, the day for a year rule, the intense focus on prophetic timelines, it was heavily influenced by the Second Adventist movement of the 19th century, especially leaders like William Miller and Nelson Barber, men who Russell worked with very closely. So what can we say is the legacy of this 1914 calculation? Why did this specific prophecy manage to endure when so many others from that exact same era have been completely forgotten? The answer, it turns out, is incredibly revealing. In his original 1876 article, Russell himself gives us a huge clue. After laying out the entire complex 1914 calculation, he adds this little line, saying there are many other and clearer evidences pointing to the same time. Think about that. In his own mind, this prophecy wasn't even the strongest argument he had. So what were these supposedly clearer evidences? Well, get ready for this. They included things like the belief that 6,000 years of human history ended back in 1874, some very complex mathematical parallels drawn from Jesus' life, and, wait for it, even measurements taken from the Great Pyramid of Giza. At the time, these were considered almost infallible proofs, and yet today, every single one of them has been completely discarded. And that leaves us with one last fascinating question to think about. When a belief system is built on multiple pillars of evidence, why is it that one pillar can survive and even become central doctrine, long after all these supposedly clearer, stronger pillars around it have completely crumbled away? It's a powerful question about how ideas have chosen, how they evolve, and what truly gives them their staying power.